Hi, mathematicians. Before you do anything, pretty please pause the video and write this example problem next to the blank graph. Just pause the video, write it, and then restart the video once you've got that written down. All right, so I'm going to assume you have this word problem written on your paper now. And we've written quite a few problems in standard form at this point. I know this one's going to be standard form because it doesn't say anything about a rate of change. So this one is going to fall into standard form. And because it happened to be first in the problem, Mr. Goodbar happened to come first, I'm going to make the number of Mr. Goodbars my x, and I am going to make the number of Snickers be my y. So, because Mr. Goodbars cost $2 a piece, that's going to be 2x, plus Snickers cost $2.50. And then the total that this kid has to spend is going to be 20. So that is where all the pieces of my equation came from. So one thing we haven't talked about yet about standard form is it makes it really easy to graph the intercepts. And remember what we mean by, I'm going to highlight the word up here in orange. Remember, intercepts means like where it hits the x-axis, that would be your x-intercept, and then wherever the graph hits the y-axis, that would be your y-intercept. So in order to find the x-intercept, so that is going to be where it hits the x-axis. The x-axis is here. So the y value is going to have to be 0 because the only way that you get the graph to hit here on the x-axis anywhere, the y-coordinate has to be a 0. So I'm going to, again, because I'm trying to find the x-intercept, we're going to put a 0 in for y. So here is what that would look like. So I'm going to take the equation. And instead of 250 times y, I am going to replace that y with a 0. Well, what's going to happen when I multiply 250 times 0? Well, that is going to be 0. So this part of the equation is basically just out of there. We don't need to do anything else with it. So that's gone. All I have left now is 2x is equal to 20. So in other words, what if he decided to buy no Snickers and he just decided to buy nothing but Mr. Goodbars? So divide both sides by 2. My x-intercept is going to be a 10. So because that's my x-intercept, that means that there should be a coordinate right here at 10 to correspond with that x-intercept. Well, now that we've done that for the x-intercept, we need to do the same thing for the y-intercept. Except instead of putting a 0 in for x, I'm sorry, a 0 in for y, like we did over here, now we're going to put a 0 in for our x. So I'm going to replace that x with a 0. So what is 2 times 0? Well, 2 times 0 is 0. So this part of the equation is basically gone. So now I'm going to focus on this part. So 250y is equal to 20. Divide both sides by $2.50. So my y-intercept, once I do 20 divided by 250, is going to give me 8. So I need a coordinate that corresponds with that y-intercept right here at 8. And another nice thing about when you're graphing by intercepts is that most teachers anyway, will let you get away with only having 2 coordinates. When we had to graph by slope intercept form before, we needed more than 1 coordinate, or we needed 3 coordinates. But when you're graphing by intercepts, you are allowed to just connect the coordinates right there. And we're not going to draw arrows. I'm putting this in red because it's wrong. We're not going to do arrows because you can't actually have negative Snickers and negative Mr. Goodbars, right? So we don't want anything to go out here or here because that would get us into the negatives. So this is what the graph would look like for that situation. Alrighty, so scroll down to number 2 and write yourself a copy of that problem. And while we do a lot of real life examples of graphing, sometimes, actually a lot of time in algebra, we're just going to do it with the symbols. And so that's what I'm going to do here. Oh, I just realized this is the wrong number. There we go. Okay, so we are going to graph this one by intercepts also. So I'm going to find my x-intercept first. And again, for it to hit the x-axis, my y-coordinate has to be a 0. So that means I'm going to take this y and replace it with a 0. Three times 0 is going to give me 0, so that part of the equation is basically gone. So that leaves me with 2x is equal to 12. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So my x-intercept is going to be a 6, which means I need a dot. 2, 3. Right there where the x-coordinate is 6 on the x-axis. And then I need to find my y-intercept. But instead of putting a 0 in for y, now I need to put a 0 in for x. So I'm going to bring my equation down. And instead of doing 2 times x, I'm going to do 2 times 0. Two times 0 is going to give me, you guessed it, 0. So that part of the equation's gone. So 3y is equal to 12. Divide both sides by 3. My y-coordinate is going to be a 4. So my y-intercept is going to be right here on the y-axis at 4. Now, because this isn't a real life situation, we can have negative values. You can still just connect those coordinates, but you need to make sure that your line goes all the way across the graph this time. And that you have arrows because technically that line can go on forever, because unlike our previous example where you couldn't have negative Mr. Goodbars or Snickers, you can have negative numbers when it's not a real situation in this context. Alrighty, so for this example, why don't you pause the video and try to take your best shot at finding the x-intercept and finding the y-intercept. based on those two examples that we just got, and then restart the video when you are ready to check. Alrighty, so hopefully you paused the video and now you're ready to try and see if you were right. So to find the x-intercept, we're going to put a 0 in for y. And so if we do, 6x, instead of 4 times y, we're going to do 4 times 0. And 4 times 0 is going to give you 0, which just leaves the 6x left over. Divide both sides by 6. Your x-intercept should be a 5. On the y-intercept, x is going to be equal to 0. So I am going to replace that x. So it'll be 6 times 0. So 6 times 0 is going to be 0, which means we really just have the 4y is equal to 30. Divide both sides by 4. You're going to see on the Delta Math assignment that you're being asked to do over this that they want you to leave it as a simplified fraction. So if we put into the calculator that 30 divided by 4, it's not going to turn out to be a whole number, but they want you to leave it as a simplified fraction. So your y-intercept should be 15 over 2. Okay, so you guys pause the video, try this one out, restart the video when you're ready. Alrighty, so hopefully you have tried this out yourself. So to find the x-intercept, we're going to put a 0 in for y. So everything else is the same, except for putting a 0 in for y. 8 times 0 is going to be 0, so that's basically gone. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So my x-intercept is equal to 5. And remember, when we're finding the y-intercept, x is what's going to be equal to 0. So instead of 4 times x, we're going to do 4 times 0. So 4 times 0 is going to be 0, which leaves us with the 8y equal to 20. Divide both sides by 8. My y-intercept is going to be, in simplified form, 5 over 2.